the Democratic Alliance was having its own kind of meltdown right here at home. One that involves the party's former leader, by the way, a lobbying firm, Elon Musk's Starlink, and questions about whether the DA has been doing the very thing it has spent years accusing the ANC of doing. Now, what am I talking about? Here's where it starts to get complicated, but stick with me because I'm good at explaining things to you, and once you understand the full picture, it's actually not that hard to follow. Tony Leon is a significant figure in South African politics. Tony Leon led the Democratic Alliance, built it into a credible opposition force, and left day-to-day politics to run a strategic communications firm called Resolve Communications. He serves as the executive chairperson. The CEO is former DA Chief Executive Paul Bowie. So, firm chaired by ex-DA leader, run by ex-DA CEO. You already see where this criticism is going to come from. Now, this Resolve Communications company has Starlink as a client. Starlink, as in Elon Musk's satellite internet service Starlink, which has been trying to get a proper operating license in South Africa for a while now, quite a while. I've covered it a few times. Watch my videos about them. The licensing process had been complicated because of BEE, Black Economic Empowerment, requirements that foreign satellite companies haven't always been able to meet. Here's the connection that blew up this week. Communications Minister Solly Malatsi, a DA minister, gazetted a new policy direction in December 2025 on what's called equity equivalent investment programs. This is essentially a mechanism that allows companies like Starlink to fulfill their BEE requirements in alternative ways, rather than having a South African Black majority shareholder. They can just invest in community development, skills training, infrastructure, or other approved activities instead, right? Critics have called this policy change. They've called this change policy a route to licensing Starlink in South Africa specifically, right? So the critics have said, oh, wow, they're just trying to find another way to license Starlink in South Africa. How shady. And John Steenhuisen, in his now famous Hyenas interview in News 24, where he accused Jordan Hill Lewis, the new DA leader, of betraying him, mentioned almost in passing that Tony Leon's Resolve Communications company had been approaching DA ministers, including Solly Malatsi, requesting meetings on behalf of clients, including Starlink clients. So the picture looks like this. Tony Leon's firm lobbies DA minister for meeting on behalf of Starlink. That same DA minister changes the rules that help Starlink operate in South Africa. So the firm whose client benefits from the rule of change is chaired by the party's former leader. No formal disclosure, no lobbying register, no public record. Phumzile van Dam, herself a former DA MP, put it simply on X. We have confirmation that Starlink is a client of Resolve Communications. This means that the former leader of the DA must have facilitated a meeting with a prospective tender applicant, which resulted in the minister beginning to change rules to fit the requirements of that bidder. Basically, Tony Leon changed the rules so that it convenienced him. The ANC called for a full investigation because the ANC are always the good guys, right? Describing it as a possible state capture. ActionSA called it Gupta-esque, comparing it to the Guptas and Zuma, and said they'd submit parliamentary questions to every DA minister about their interactions with Resolve. The former environment minister, what was his name? Dion George. He said Resolve Communications had also approached him on behalf of waste management company Redisa, while that company was in active litigation against his department. He declined repeatedly. Now, here's where I want to be fair and balanced, because I think the exact framing matters enormously here. Tony Leon categorically denies wrongdoing. He says lobbying is a powerful practice, a lawful practice that happens everywhere in the world. He says a request made and freely refused is not corruption. He says equating what Resolve does with Zuma and the Guptas and state capture is just an insult. It is an insult to the South Africans who suffered under the real thing. His words, not mine. and he's threatening legal action against people making what he calls false allegations. And here's the honest truth. He's not wrong that lobbying is normal and legal. Firms use political connections all the time to get meetings with ministers. It exists everywhere, trust me. In the United States, they are required to register and disclose their activities publicly. In South Africa, not really. There's no lobbying register. No disclosure requirements, no way for the public to check who's talking with who, who's talking with which minister on behalf of which client, about which policy change. And that is actually the real scandal here. Not necessarily what Leon or Resolve did, but the fact that there is no system requiring any of this to be transparent. So the question isn't really, did Tony Leon break the law? Because South Africa has no law specifically regulating lobbying. The question is, should a former party leader's firm be able to arrange undisclosed meetings between the party's sitting ministers and private clients who stand to benefit from policy changes those ministers control? And should those policy changes be made without any public disclosure of whether the minister received lobbying from interested parties? The answer in a healthy democracy is no. Not because it's necessarily corrupt, but because without disclosure, the public cannot tell the difference between a policy change made on merit and a policy change made because someone with the right connections set up the right meeting. And that uncertainty is itself corrosive. The Daily Maverick headline on this was perhaps the most cutting of all. If you wanted loyalty, why didn't Steenhuisen just get a dog? The point being, Steenhuisen opened this particular can of worms entirely out of personal bitterness about being demoted, not out of principle. And in doing so, he's damaged not just Leon and Resolve, but the DA's entire brand as the clean governance alternative to ANC corruption. For years, the DA likes to call themselves the party of transparency and ethical governance. Every time there was an ANC corruption scandal, the DA would run to the microphone and say something. But now we have a situation where the party's former leader runs a firm that lobbied its sitting ministers. Its own systems apparently have no lobbyist disclosure requirements, and the whole thing came out not through a DA whistleblowing mechanism, but through a bitter public thing between two of the party's most senior former figures. That's not such a squeaky clean alternative to state capture. I don't know what that is. But hey, you tell me. I'll see you next time.